to show you today how I'm going to prep for the upcoming Norah's Vintage Afghan Knit-Along that we're starting next week. Block number 1 tutorial will be up on the channel next Tuesday. So I wanted to show you how I go about preparing for a project of this magnitude. This is going to be an ongoing long-term thing. So I want to make sure that I'm doing all the things that I like to do to set up for success. So the first thing I do is print all 23 pages of the pattern. The reason I do that is because I really like to have a hard copy where I can use a post-it note or just a pencil and make notes, or a highlighter for things that I want to pay special attention to. So I really like to print a hard copy. A lot of people enjoy the Knit Companion app, and I agree there's a lot of features that are beneficial there, but I'm still old school in that way, that I like that paper hard copy, so that if I alter something, I can make notes. Now, I'm aware that most of the apps have a feature that allows you to do that, but sometimes I'm not very good at keeping my phone charged, or I don't know, I just like paper. I want a full-size sheet of paper. So you do what works best for you. I'm just sharing the things that I've learned that work best for me over the years. So for this, I went and got, we have several of these kicking around the house. It's just this little folder that has the old school, you know, metal binder thing. And then I put all of the pages in a plastic sleeve protector. So I like to do that because I can always add a sticky paper. If there's something I really want to make an actual written note about, I can just simply take that page out and do that. But it makes a nice kind of a slippery surface in order to use the, you know, washi tape or highlighter tape or painter's tape or whatever it is that you prefer to move along and keep track of your markers. The other thing is I've tried those magnetic boards with the, you know, the thing that moves down or up and down, you know, the magnetic line thing. Sometimes it goes wonky. I have one cat that likes to play with things, and it's like, it just moves. Maybe the one I have isn't strong enough, but yeah, it's not very trustworthy if it gets knocked off the desk, or yeah, I'm just going with paper. So when I first begin a new pattern, especially something of this magnitude that's going to be an ongoing complicated project for many, many months, I like to make sure that I understand the gauge and the initial instructions here. So these are just material or, you know, yarn recommendations that would work. And then the gauge is super important. So you're going to take some time to swatch, and I'll link to a video down below about swatching and checking your gauge. So that's going to be super important. The reason it's so important, even though this is not a fitted garment, you want your blocks to all be the same so that they match up at the corners, and they're all, you know, when we go to assemble everything, you want it to be the same without a bunch of blocking and stretching or shrinking or any of that. So the gauge is important because we're piecing all this together later. So take a little bit to swatch, and if you have questions about that, absolutely leave a comment below and hit me up. So the other thing I want to do is I just kind of like to read through overall, skim through the whole thing and get an idea of how this is going to go and what's going on. So right away, we're going to start with, you know, block 1, block 2, and so forth. When we get up to page 5, I went ahead and took a pencil and made abbreviation notes for myself on what colors I decided to have for block 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Now, A refers to the colors, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4 that are the same color, and I went ahead and put my color abbreviations here so that I wouldn't get confused as I'm going along. So I went ahead and wrote that on here. So when I move on to block 2, I'll know which color to grab and wind. So that's how I chose to set up my chart. The other thing I like to do is use that sticky painter's tape. Now, I know a lot of people like to use highlighter tape or washi tape. Anything like that that you can stick and unstick is super handy for charts. I use the painter's tape, and I put it down like this. I like to put it above the row I'm working on. Either way is fine, or below, either one. And then it's really easy to just rip it off and move it along your chart. The only reason I decided not to go ahead and get highlighter tape this time is because I suspect, being as OCD as I am, that I would want the width of the tape to exactly match the size of my grid blocks here. So I don't know if that's possible or not. So I'll just probably carry on with my painter's tape for now. But anyway, that's what I like to do with my charts. So some of these charts look pretty daunting. Don't get too concerned about that. We'll go through all that step by step. So next week, when I upload the first video, we'll go through this pretty carefully and I'll show you several things about it as we're going along. I wound my yarn because my yarn came in skeins like this, and so I've wound my first color, actually wound the second one too. So I've knitted my little swatch here, and I just did a couple rows of garter stitch at the bottom just to, you know, minimize the curling here. And then I measured to make sure that I am getting gauge at 5 stitches per inch. So if you need to, you know, fiddle around with that a little bit, adjusting the size needles that you have with the yarn combination, then you'll want to do that. And as always, drop me a comment if you have questions about, you know, sizing up or down to achieve the intended gauge. The other thing I've talked about a little bit in the groups is the yarn that I chose. The reason I went with the Madeline Tosh Vintage, although it is a more expensive, higher end yarn, I feel like this is going to be a quality heirloom, you know, an heirloom quality piece that's going to be on my couch for potentially for decades. And so while there are lots and lots of acrylic yarns out there that are good quality and durable, and I think that's fantastic, this is just what we chose to do, and it is a little bit more expensive. So if you wanted to go that route, you could just buy 1 skein per month as we go along. And because of the way the blocks are set up, it probably wouldn't matter whether they're the same dye lot, even if you chose to do all a similar color or tones of the same color, like I am. So you don't necessarily have to buy it all in one shot. All right, I think we're ready to cast on. So I'll see you next Tuesday for that. And I want to give a quick shout out to all those people who have pledged their support over on Patreon. If that's something you're interested in checking out, I'll drop the link down below. As always, I appreciate you like and subscribe the videos here, and I'll see you in the groups on Ravelry and Facebook.